Popes have been some of the most iconic and important people in history. The first Pope, Peter, led early Christians between the years 30 AD and 70 AD, and there have been 265 popes since. Some have stopped invasions with a simple conversation, and others have drank, gambled, and had a little bit too much fun with blood relatives, and even sold the papacy itself to the highest bidder. Today, we are looking at 8 popes with crazy stories. It's not every day that a pope stops an invasion. It is even more rare to be hailed as one of the most important people in the church's history. This all can be said for one man. Pope Leo I, or as some refer to him, Leo the Great, is one of the most iconic popes in history. He effectively stopped an invasion of Italy with one of history's most feared warlords, simply by talking to him. Pope Leo reigned from 440 to 461 AD, and let's just say the man didn't exactly have the easiest go of it. During his time, the Western Roman Empire was on the brink of collapse. Political instability, external threats, and internal decay plagued Rome. In the midst of this turmoil rose one of the most influential popes in the history of the Catholic Church. Leo led the church during one of its most critical periods. His leadership was marked by theological clarity, strong diplomacy, and a profound commitment to the authority of the papacy. One of the most well-known events of Leo's papacy occurred in 452, when Attila, the leader of the fierce nomadic Huns, invaded northern Italy and began moving toward Rome. At a time when the Roman military could no longer guarantee the city's safety, Pope Leo took the extraordinary step of personally meeting with Attila near Mantua. Historical accounts suggest that Leo, through diplomacy, moral authority, and also probably bribery, persuaded Attila to turn back and spare the city. While some later sources describe divine visions accompanying Leo during the meeting, historians still debate the exact reasons Attila withdrew. Nevertheless, Leo's role in preventing the sack of Rome solidified his reputation as a stabilizing force during a time of crisis. Leo's theology contributions, along with the defense of Rome and assertion of papal authority, earned him a lasting legacy. He was later declared a doctor of the Church and was the first pope to receive the title the Great. Few figures in papal history are as controversial or bewildering as Pope Benedict IX. I mean, it's never good when a pope is known as a demon from hell, but future saints didn't know what else to call him. In 1032, and thanks to his uncle, he became the pope at just 20 years old. However, some accounts suggest he was even younger. At the time, the papacy was deeply entangled with Roman nobility, often treated more like a political prize than a spiritual calling. Benedict IX's first reign was marked by widespread accusations of immorality, corruption, and abuse of power. By 1044, unrest in Rome forced him out, and a rival pope was installed, but Benedict returned within months, retaking the papal throne. Then, in 1045, in an unprecedented move, he sold the papacy, allegedly in exchange for money and the promise of a marriage, handing over the office to his godfather, Pope Gregory VI. But the drama doesn't end there. Benedict later attempted to reclaim the papacy a third time, plunging the church into chaos. For a brief period, 3 different men claimed to be pope at once. This crisis eventually led to the intervention of the German king, Henry III, and the Council of Sutri in 1046, which deposed all claimants and attempted to restore order. Though he briefly regained power yet again in 1047, Benedict IX was finally removed for good in 1048. His legacy is one of the most complex and infamous in papal history. In the midst of one of the most devastating conflicts the world has ever seen, a quiet but determined pope emerged from the Vatican. Pope Benedict XV, elected in 1914, became a voice of peace during the chaos of World War I. Benedict XV became pope just a few months after the outbreak of the First World War. While conflict in Europe rose, the continent descended into violence. Pope Benedict immediately made it his mission to advocate for peace. From the very beginning of his papacy, he called the war the suicide of Europe. Unlike many world leaders at the time, Pope Benedict refused to take sides. He insisted on the church's neutrality, focusing instead on humanitarian efforts. Under his leadership, the Vatican organized aid for prisoners of war, exchanged information between families and soldiers, and provided medical and spiritual support to victims of the conflict. In 1917, Benedict issued a formal peace proposal, calling for disarmament, arbitration, and the restoration of occupied territories. While many leaders ignored his appeal, the ideas he presented would later influence the development of international diplomacy and organizations like the League of Nations. Benedict also worked to strengthen the church internally. He reformed the Code of Canon Law, which was the first comprehensive codification of church law in its history. His efforts brought legal clarity and administrative unity to the Catholic Church worldwide. Despite his significant contributions, Benedict XV is sometimes overlooked in the broader history of the papacy. He ruled during a time when world affairs overshadowed religious matters, and his message of peace was often drowned out by the noise of war. Still, his legacy as a peacemaker, a humanitarian, and a modern reformer has grown in recognition over time. Don't assume death will keep you out of the courtroom, because in the year 897, Pope Stephen VI conducted one of the darkest and most surreal episodes in church history, the event known as the Cadaver Synod. Pope Stephen VI had ordered the corpse of his predecessor, Pope Formosus, exhumed, dressed in papal vestments, and placed on trial 9 months after his death. In this grotesque public spectacle, Formosus's decaying corpse was seated on a throne, with a deacon appointed to speak on his behalf. The charges? Violating canon law, perjury, and illegitimately seeking the papacy. Formosus had previously been a bishop of another diocese, which technically made him ineligible for the papal office at the time. But the trial wasn't truly about church law. It was a public humiliation, meant to erase his legacy. The corpse was found guilty, had his blessing fingers removed, was rewrapped in plain clothes, and was tossed into the Tiber River. Backlash came quickly. Public opinion turned against Stephen. Riots broke out in Rome, and later that same year, he was imprisoned and strangled to death. The Cadaver Synod was condemned by future popes, and Formosus's reputation was posthumously restored. There was once a pope that was so smart and intellectual, he changed the course of the church. Pope Benedict XIV emerged as a surprising figure of balance, intellect, and reform. But to call Pope Benedict XIV a scholar would be an understatement. Benedict XIV became pope in 1740. Known for his deep scholarship, diplomatic skill, and sense of moderation, he served as a bridge between tradition and modernity during a time when the Catholic Church was navigating complex challenges across Europe and the world. Benedict XIV was already recognized as a brilliant canon lawyer and a theologian. As pope, he used his expertise to push forward important reforms in canon law, liturgy, and church governance. He worked to streamline the process of sainthood, ensuring more rigorous standards of evidence for miracles and virtues. This brought more credibility and order to the church's practices. One of Benedict's most enduring legacies was his openness to science and intellectual dialogue. He encouraged the study of medicine and astronomy, supported the work of scholars, and even allowed the publication of some Enlightenment authors at a time when many in the church viewed these ideas as suspicious. He also championed the independence of the church from political interference. In an age when monarchs often sought to control religious appointments and policy, Benedict defended the spiritual authority of the papacy while remaining a skilled negotiator with European powers. Imagine you just finished high school, you are ready to enter the world, and now you just became the Pope. Well, that would be a modern way to explain Pope John XII. Around the age of 17, and after his father's death, he would succeed him as the Prince of the Romans. And then, with the death of Pope Agapetus II in 955, he was elected his successor too, adopting the name John XII. John's reign quickly became infamous. Sources, even from within the church, accused him of turning the Lateran Palace into a den of vice. Allegations ranged from gambling, drinking, adultery, simony, blasphemy, the list goes on. There are even accounts of him getting way too close with his own niece. In 962, John crowned the German King Otto I as Holy Roman Emperor, a decision meant to secure protection against local threats in Rome. But the alliance soured. John later turned against Otto, attempting to undermine him. Otto marched into Rome, held a synod, and had John deposed, charging him with perjury, murder, and sacrilege. Otto and the synod elected a new pope, but John XII wasn't finished. After Otto left the city, John returned with his supporters, regained control, and punished those who opposed him. Just months later, in 964, Pope John XII died under mysterious circumstances. There are many theories surrounding his death. However, they all relay his cause of death during the act of adultery. Pope John XII was only 27 years old when he died. Gone but not forgotten, Pope Francis became one of the most iconic and unique popes to ever exist. For many, he was a breath of fresh air in an institution often viewed as rigid and slow to change. His legacy is one of humility, outreach, and bold efforts to meet the world where it is, without forgetting where the church came from. On March 13, 2013, history was made. For the first time, a pope came from the Americas. Pope Francis was born in Argentina and came from humble beginnings. He studied chemistry, joined the Jesuit order, and built a reputation as a man of deep pastoral care, known for riding the bus, visiting the sick, and living simply. That simplicity carried over into his papacy. Francis declined many of the luxuries of the office, choosing instead to live in a modest guest house and emphasizing mercy over pomp. His focus quickly became clear: social justice, compassion, and reform. Francis spoke out forcefully against consumerism, calling it a subtle dictatorship that distracts from faith and dignity. He challenged global leaders on climate change, becoming the first pope to devote an entire encyclical, Laudato Si, to care for the environment. In 2022, he issued a historic apology to Indigenous peoples in Canada, acknowledging the church's role in residential school abuse, a move long awaited by First Nations communities. Pope Francis was also seen as a more inclusive and progressive voice. While not changing doctrine, he opened the door to broader discussions about sexual orientation, the role of women in the church, and the realities faced by divorced and remarried Catholics. His motto, "Who am I to judge?" became a symbol of a softer, more pastoral approach. Pope Paul IV was rightfully known as the worst pope of the 16th century. He was only pope for approximately 4 years. However, after his papacy, he had left Rome in an uproar. He was a man of intense conviction, fierce reform, and anti-Semitism. The 16th century was a defining time for the Catholic Church. The Protestant Reformation had fractured Europe, and the church was scrambling to respond. Paul IV was elected pope in 1555. The Reformation had already taken root in much of Northern Europe. Paul IV's response was not dialogue, but containment. He strengthened the Roman Inquisition, tasking it with rooting out heresy across Catholic territories. One of his lasting actions was publishing the Index of Prohibited Books, a list of banned texts considered harmful to faith or morals. But Paul IV's strict policies extended beyond Christian dissenters. In his first year as pope, he forced Rome's Jewish population into the first formal ghetto. They were sequestered from the rest of the city, required Jews to wear identifying yellow hats, subjected them to violence, and banned them from owning property. At the same time, he forced them to pay for any construction done to the ghetto. Paul IV also clashed with secular powers. He opposed Spanish influence in Italy and the church. His confrontational stance nearly sparked war with Philip II of Spain, and his political maneuvers left the papacy diplomatically isolated. When Paul IV died in 1559, the reaction in Rome was immediate. Statues of him were toppled, and mobs stormed the Inquisition's office. Though he helped shape the Counter-Reformation, his papacy was remembered as harsh and divisive. So there you have it, 8 popes with crazy stories. Which of these pope stories shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to History Stomp for more weird and fascinating history facts. Thanks for watching.